Hello, Glasgow, how are you? Yes! Lovely to see you all here. So many people at the top as well. The top is absolutely packed. So thank you for choosing to spend the next half hour with me. I think we might have some fun. You never know. These things do happen sometimes. Are you having fun in general? It's the second day of the conference. It seems to me like it's the fourth or fifth. But it's not. It's only day 2. We've got 2 more to go after this, don't forget. And anyone attempted to speak with any of the locals? And how did you get on with that? Because some of the locals are watching me here and down there, and Glaswegians do have a bit of a reputation for being quite difficult to understand sometimes. Am I right, Kevin? I don't know if it's fair. Put your hands up. Do you find the accent in this part of the world a bit difficult to understand sometimes? Yeah. It's I think it's a good thing. I love the Glaswegian accent. I'm from the East Coast, and I think I prefer your accent to ours. Yeah. I actually lived in Glasgow for 1 year, and I love it here. And it's lovely to be back. And I had a friend when I was studying here in Glasgow called Nasli. And Nasli was from London. And she came up to Glasgow, and she had a bit of a problem sometimes understanding the Glaswegian accent. And she got a job working in a bar. And it was I think it was just a normal Glasgow bar, I'm not too sure. But one day, a man came into the bar and asked her for 4 pina coladas. And how international are pina coladas? Do we all know what pina coladas are? Yeah, we all know what pina coladas are, right? What's in a pina colada? Is it rum? I'm actually generally not too sure. Rum and what else? Pineapple juice. And you know, there's different variations of it, aren't there? You can have the kind of cheap version, which is Malibu and pineapple juice, or you can have proper Bacardi rum shaken up with creamy stuff. I don't know what it is. Milk, maybe? Cream, perhaps? And you've got, what do you put in the top? An umbrella, yes. Not a full-sized umbrella, of course, you understand, a miniature one. You knew that, right? Yeah. A full-size umbrella probably wouldn't fit. And so that was what my friend Nasli got asked for 4 pina coladas. Or anyone here from a Spanish-speaking country? Do you say pina colada? Pina coladas. Yeah, we just decided to change it to pina coladas because it's easier for us. But if I'm in Spain, because I live in Barcelona, I always say a pina colada when I order a round of pina coladas, which I do sometimes. And anyway, so what she did, Nasli, she went to the bar and she started to prepare the drink, and she put in the ice, and she put in the rum, and she put in the creamy stuff, unidentified creamy stuff, possibly cream, and she put in the pineapple juice, and she shook it around, and she put in the miniature umbrella, and she did that 4 times, and she took them all back to the customer who had been watching her and waiting all this time, and he took one look at them and said, "What's that?" And she said, 4 pina coladas. And he said, "I didn't ask for that. I asked for 4 pints of lager." That was my bad attempt at a Glaswegian accent. I apologize. Did you get what I said there? 4 pints of lager. So, did you like that story? I don't know about you, but I absolutely love, I really, really love stories about misunderstandings. I think that we spend our lives teaching English, and it's the moments when person A hears something different to what person B intended, and the result can be comedy. I think that we have to take these moments, collect them, use them, celebrate them, love them, cherish them, and keep them. And I'm sure you've got some good examples of stories about misunderstandings yourselves. Is that possible? Just don't, I'm not going to ask you to tell me your story, but just if you maybe think possibly that you may have a story involving a misunderstanding, put up your hand. You see, that looks to me like most people. I mentioned I live in Edinburgh. That's not true. I mentioned I'm from Edinburgh, East Coast anyway, and I've just been to visit my mum and dad, and my grandfather as well, who's 97 years old. And my dad, I don't know why he does this, he thinks it's funny, he calls him the 100-year-old man. I don't know why, the 100-year-old man, because he's only 97. But my dad says it's close enough. He's the 100-year-old man. So he went, I wasn't there, but he told me, he went to take my grandfather for some lunch, and they had a bowl of soup, and my grandfather had a bacon sandwich. And my dad said, a bacon sandwich, please, for the 100-year-old man. Because he's a bit silly, my dad. And the waitress came back and said, there's your bowl of soup. That was for my dad. And she said, and a bacon sandwich for the hungry old man. Just out of interest, if you've suddenly got another story about a misunderstanding, put up your hand. Now, I could ask you to tell your neighbours your stories about misunderstandings, couldn't I? But I'm not going to, because you're here to listen to me. But you know what's interesting? I have, who's on Facebook? Most of us. And I assume that a lot of you, probably all of us, have got friends on Facebook who also work as teachers. Is that right? And we're pretty supportive people, aren't we? We're nice people, teachers. And we like to help each other. And one of my teacher friends on Facebook, she put out a call for help a few months ago, a few weeks ago, don't remember, some time ago. And it was this. She said, I need your help. That's a good way to start a call for help, isn't it? I need your help. Tomorrow, I have to do a class, and the theme is misunderstandings. And I'm desperately trying to think of a video involving a misunderstanding that I can use to introduce the topic. And people were being very supportive. Teachers were suggesting, offering various videos. Do you remember that one of the two Scotsmen in a lift? The voice-operated lift, which is very funny. But it's the fact that you all know it. I did see it, and I thought to myself, well, it's funny, but I've seen it so many times. And I was thinking, why is it that this teacher feels the need to introduce the subject of misunderstanding, something as fundamental as misunderstandings, with a piece of material, with a video? Why is that? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Is it? Maybe it's not. Well, I think it is. I think it's a very interesting question. Why should we? And I love working with videos. I'm a video guy. Some of you know that. And I go around the world and I have workshops and I give talks and I work with teachers and I ask them what they do with video in the classroom. And you know the number one thing in my universe, working with my teachers, that teachers use videos for in their classroom? To introduce topics. And I think, why is that? Why can't we be the ones to introduce topics ourselves through a story? What makes us so uncomfortable with that idea? But imagine you're reading your course book, and the rubrics are telling you what to do and how to do it, and it says, do this, do that. Imagine one day in your course book, you saw the words, introduce the topic of misunderstandings by telling your students one that you experienced yourself. You just wouldn't see that, would you? Why not? Because it's completely common to ask your students to get into pairs and talk about a time when they experienced a misunderstanding. That's our norm, isn't it? And why is that? I don't know. I've got no idea. I do. That's why I'm here today doing this talk. I've got some ideas. But why have we come to this? Moment to think. That was the thinking done. Anyway, let's go back. I would like to take you back to 2001. Who was alive in 2001? Who was teaching in 2001? Who's become a teacher since 2001? Oh, who's been teaching for less than 5 years? Okay, who's been teaching since 1991? I don't believe you. Now, in 2001 is the year that I did my Cert TESOL in Barcelona, which is where I live. And I was doing a reading. This was I think it was one of my first teaching practice sessions, doing a reading. You know, I think I'd already done my first. What's the first thing you do in your teaching practice? What's a sort of typical, very, very first teaching practice session? Something very simple usually, isn't it? Maybe set up a game, set up a simple activity. And mine was, I think it was my second or third, I don't remember, it's not important, but I was doing a reading, and I chose something topical for the day. I bet you can't remember what it was. What was topical back in 2001? Every teacher was bringing into the classroom. It was mad cow disease. And so I set up this reading with a text. I had the text, and students had to do that thing, you know. They had some pre-reading questions. I did some pre-teaching the vocabulary, and they read the text, and the idea was that everything would kind of lather up into this great big frenzy of discussion and debate, and I would silently kind of orchestrate it by keeping the noisy students down over there and bringing the quiet ones out of their shell, except that never ever happened. It just went, you know? And I don't think I can put my hand on my heart and say I've never in my life been able to get a successful class discussion through a text. Maybe I have, I just can't recall one time I've done that. I don't think it's the best way to get people speaking, but here I was. They weren't taking the bait, my students, and I panicked a bit. What am I going to do? They're not talking. What can I possibly do? So I decided to tell a joke, and it was a topical joke. And do you want to hear it? All right, 2 cows standing in a field, and they're talking to each other, and one cow says to the other, this is getting really serious, this mad cow disease, isn't it? And I hear it spreading from farm to farm. I think we ought to be a bit worried. And the second cow says, I'm not worried, so it doesn't affect us ducks. Now, I didn't really expect you to laugh, to be honest, but how do you think my tutor, or rather, what do you think my tutor's feedback was about this lesson? Too much teacher talking time. I know exactly what my tutor said, because like many of us, I've still got that A4 ring-bound folder from all the notes. And I photocopied it, and I've got it here to show you. Would you like to see it? This is what it says. It says, "Well done, Jamie. This was a well-planned lesson. Your subject matter encouraged lots of STT, which stands for students talking time. The students really enjoyed themselves, and most of them contributed, but aim not to turn the class into a Jamie show. Although it's funny, remember that it's the students who need the practice speaking." So we've got this idea of this TTT versus STT, and I don't know what you think about this, but for me, it was a revelation, because here I was in Barcelona, I was learning Spanish, and it made so much sense. I went, yes, I'm the one that needs to speak. I have to exercise my linguistic brain, I have to conjugate verbs, construct grammar patterns, recall vocabulary, phrases, and exercise that part of my brain necessary for speaking and developing my Spanish. And it made so much sense. It was like, yes, of course. It was a revelation. And who are the teacher trainers here? A few of us. And I'm sure we've all used this. You've got to keep your teacher talking time down to a minimum, right? Always keep your teacher talking time down to a minimum. And we know, don't we, that it's not just about time. It's not just about quantity. We know it's about quality as well, right? But, there's other things involved. It's not just about speaking too much, but it's about grading your language. It's about asking questions, responding to answers, being clear, articulate, using repetition. But the thing about the teacher talk time mantra, always keep your TTT down to minimum, is that the other things take care of themselves, don't they? Do they? I don't know. I don't know. I'm really not sure if they do. I blame having that drummed into me 15 years ago for not becoming the teacher I wanted to be quicker. Having that sound reverberating in my head, always keep your T down to minimum, kind of affected me in a bad way. It didn't allow me to develop, to work with my classroom communicative skills. And it's like I always think of I had a driving teacher. And we all had driving teachers if we drove, right? Not all of us, maybe. This is absolutely true. My driving teacher was called Mr. Glasgow. And you'll never guess where he was from. It was Edinburgh. And he used to, you know, driving teachers talk a lot, right? And he always used to say, Jamie, you'll probably pass your test first time because you're not a bad driver. But let me tell you something. Let me give you a piece of advice. Just because you pass your test does not mean you're a good driver. It means that you have a license to continue to learn to drive without an instructor in your passenger seat. And I always quite liked that. Because a teacher training course, if it was like mine, which only lasted 1 month, and sometimes I feel a bit ashamed to say that, it should be a kind of taster, like a driving course, to set you up on the pathway to improvement and self-development. But when it tells you that you can't use your voice, as my sister says, you're onto plums. Is that an expression, Kevin, that you use, onto plums? Yeah, is it a Glaswegian? What does it mean? You can't talk, can you? No, I think it's something to do with fruit machines, is that right? Plums, no, it's not. I don't know where it comes from, but if you're onto plums, you're chasing something that's not going to happen. Is that right? Yeah, it's like, imagine your hairdressers. Any hairdressers here? No. Imagine your hairdressers, at the very, very start of your career, they say, look, using scissors is bad. So you spend your whole lives trying to develop as a hairdresser, but you're not allowed to use scissors. That's a bit stupid, isn't it? And if you're not allowed to use scissors for hairdresser, you're going to have to turn to magic and try and get people to kind of grow their hair, or rather cut their hair using all this hocus pocus thing. I think that's sometimes maybe what could happen in our profession. If you're not allowed to speak, how else are we going to teach? What do you think of this talk so far? So I think there's this unhealthy sound reverberating in the ear of our profession, and it's implicit, but it's always there, and it says, teacher talk is bad and must always be avoided, or at least should be avoided. So I've got some questions for you here, and they go like this. Do you agree with me that teacher talk is inevitable in the classroom? And if you don't, you can shout out and disagree. Do you agree that teacher talk is expected? That your students will expect you to talk with them? Do you think, I mean, some things are inevitable and expected. It doesn't mean they're good, right? But do you think, or do you agree that teacher talk is essential for learning a language? It's a great question. It's a great question. How?
What's the difference between giving clear instructions and then being quiet, or like waffling on about yourself for 17 minutes?
Exactly. I'll come to that in one moment. What you're doing there is you're bringing in images of teacher talk, and that's a really useful thing to explore, and we'll do that in just a moment. So, do you agree then, if teacher talk is inevitable, essential, and expected from your students, that it's something that we should develop? So do you agree then that teacher talk can be good? What's your name, sorry?
Susie.
Susie. Do you agree then that teacher talk can be good, or teacher talk can be bad? You can get good, it's like witches. You can get good witches and bad witches. You can get good teacher talk and bad teacher talk. Do you agree with that, Susie?
Yes.
It sounded like a kind of defensive yes.
It's not black and white, is it?
It's not. It's a continuum. There's good there, there's bad there, and there's everything in the middle. Yeah, yes, it's a spectrum. So what does good teacher talk look like, and what does bad teacher talk look like? Susie just mentioned the bad teacher who's rabbiting on and on and on, talking about himself or herself. And what you used the number 17. What did you say about 17?
17 minutes. Because typically, that's what a trainee would do with language clarification.
Now, I would agree with you. That's a great example of bad teacher talk. That teacher that just stands there going on and on about maybe how great he is or how great she is, and maybe not even that, but I think that there's one word we can bring this down to, one single word which is not used enough in our profession. And when you see a teacher, if you're a trainer, and you see these teachers doing exactly what we're talking about, la, 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 it's not that they're talking too much. That's a symptom. The word that I'm referring to is the teacher lacks awareness. And I think that's key. I think that bad teacher talk is generally lack of awareness. And that takes years and years to become aware. I used to be a purveyor of terrible teacher talk. You know, I would guess that we all were when we were newbies. So what about good teacher talk? What does good teacher talk look like? Well, I think it's important to kind of change our image of what teacher talk is. It's not a monologue necessarily. Teacher talk can be dialogic. Teacher talk can be about asking questions, and really importantly, I mean, it's easy to ask questions, it's less easy to ask good questions, but it's really, really difficult to respond to students' answers. But sometimes that's where the learning happens. And as my friend Nicola always reminds me, good teacher talk involves three things: one voice and two ears. And if you're teacher trainers, I think that's a nice thing to tell your trainees, that good teacher talk involves three things: one voice and two ears. Or is it one ear and two voices? I was right, wasn't I? So do you agree that teaching English is reassuringly difficult? Does anyone think it's easy? It's really hard, isn't it? Why is it that we've been led to believe that as a profession that teaching English is easy? Why have we been led to believe that our jobs involve distributing texts, asking students to open their books at page this or that, pressing buttons to play songs or videos? Why have we? Because I think that there's this sort of idea that it has to be easy or we won't be able to do it. And what kind of starting point is that? Isn't that a terrible way to start your career? It's just dirty. And I stress the word dirty. Now, I think we've got an image problem with teacher talk. I think it's an image problem. I think it leads too readily to vague, useless images like what is teacher-centered. And I've seen teachers give demonstration classes, and then I've seen disagreement afterwards about whether or not it was teacher-centered. And it strikes me that whatever teacher-centered is vague. What you think is teacher-centered will be different to what you think is teacher-centered. Therefore, you cannot use it to inform yourselves about something, or you can't use it to persuade somebody that something is good or bad. Does that make sense? So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to make three suggestions. I'm using notes today. That's a very important thing. Teacher talk can be using notes, reading texts out aloud. Reading a text out aloud is one of the key skills that I don't remember ever having been taught as a teacher, but something I use all the time. So my three suggestions. Are you ready for number one? Let's stop calling it teacher talk time. That is just ridiculous. Teacher talk time sounds like a bad sitcom. No. Teacher talk time sounds like a bad daytime TV comedy, right? Or a chat show, maybe. Welcome to Teacher Talk Time. And today we'll be chatting with Jamie, who's going to be talking about video. So let's call it what it is, teacher talk. That's the first recommendation. Number 2, embrace storytelling. I think that the number one thing that has really resulted in my development as a teacher myself and as a trainer is storytelling. And people say to me sometimes, Jamie, it's okay for you, you can tell stories. I had to learn. I was never a storyteller. This is something I learned on the job. Is it difficult? Yes, it's reassuringly difficult, but we can do it. So maybe if we embrace storytelling, and instead of this being my feedback from my trainer, maybe my trainer could have said, well, Jamie, you told a story and the story was a text, but did you prepare your students for it enough? Did you draw attention to language features in the text? Did you repeat items of language in the text? Did you ask your students questions? Did they understand the joke? Did you think you did something after the story which was valuable? My third thing, this is especially if you're teacher trainers, is to give out this teacher talk time mantra, if you're going to use it, that is. I don't have any big problem with it. I know that newbie teachers, we all do, we talk too much, right? So I don't have a big problem, but I think you have to give it out with a postscript. And the postscript is, an essential skill for any teacher is to be able to speak less and use their voice sparingly. But that does not mean that teacher talk is inherently bad. Oh no. When you leave the nest and fly away, you have to constantly work on your classroom communicative skills, and you have to hone the effectiveness of your teacher talk. So, I asked if there was any hairdressers here. You said no. Are there anyone here ever been a sculptor? What's your name? Kate. Kate. Where did you learn to be a sculptor? Where? How long did that take to learn? You haven't finished learning is the best answer. Is it easy or difficult to make sculptures? Easy to make a bad one. So, when you were a trainee, when you were doing your course, you made some bad sculptures, I would imagine, because you were a newbie, yes? Did you have a trainer, a teacher? Yeah. And did your teacher ever say to you, Kate, that's a bad sculptor? Yeah. You should, in that case, because of that, keep your sculptor making time down to a minimum. Is that ever something that was ever said? Right, we've really, really got to take this seriously, because I ardently believe that this is stifling our development. When we're not allowed to speak, we can't move, we can't teach, we can't work, we can't develop. We have to turn to weird ideas. That's it, really. But let's banish this idea that teacher talk is bad. Let's banish it. Let's send it south of the border. To England. And let's give it a big kick up the arse as it goes. How about that? Thank you very much. Can I just ask a very quick question? Did you all get a slip of paper as you came in? Is there anyone here who's a subscriber to my website? These are my people. Nice to meet you all. You enjoying my Sunday posts? Every Sunday I send out a video, an article, a lesson plan, a teaching idea, something exclusive, and I'm also doing 4 webinars every single year for you. And also, this is a very, very special IATEFL for me because my new book's just out. Look, do you like it? This took me 10 years to write. If you like stories, if you like teacher talk and developing, this is a book I'd recommend, and you can get it with your special IATEFL discount. If you go to the Bournemouth English Book Centre on stand 72, and I'll be there in all the coffee books waiting for you. Happy to sign them if you like. If you want, I'm not going to push it. Thank you very much. You're really lovely people. It's been lovely to work with you. Thank you.